This is the meandering story of Automata UK, founded by Mel Croucher and later joined by Christian Penfold. Automata were the first video games company in the UK, founded in 1977, and they were also perhaps the strangest. Automata seemed to be set on creating electronic counterculture before the standard electronic culture had even been established. They were absurdist, independent creators with a penchant for smashing through the fourth wall with a hammer. Always artistic, always off the wall, mostly with humour. Croucher appeared to be the heart of the operation, and bored of his work in architecture, he put his money towards creating the company. Penfold, with his previous sales background, was the straight-thinking head, and the two formed a partnership worth talking about. Automata didn't start as a company focused on games. Their initial output was a much more serious affair: information brochures and maps for tourism companies. It wasn't until Penfold bought a Sinclair ZX81 that things started to change. Croucher, while unfamiliar with what it could do in full, saw the commercial viability of software development, and he understood at an early point that the world was headed towards an electronic era. He said, "I knew that computers were not for performing business functions at all, but would transform everything I was involved in. I was absolutely convinced that computers would facilitate the convergence of film, book, theatre and music, with the added miracle of interactivity." This was in the late 1970s, and the forward-thinking nature of this quote is perhaps the defining arrow throughout this entire story. Croucher and Penfold saw the future of electronic media long before it had truly entered the home market, and their products consistently aimed to push that medium further than almost anyone else at the time. Automata's story as the first video game company in the UK and the forward-thinking nature of its founders is interesting on its own, but things really start to fall down the rabbit hole once we reach the heady heights of 1982, with the inception of Automata's mascot, PiMan. PiMan is a humanoid figure with a long nose. He hates swearing, and rubber ducks make him angry. He featured in multiple Automata games. The first, and most important, was Pi-Mania. Pi-Mania was released in 1982 for the ZX Spectrum, alongside versions on the BBC Micro and Dragon 32. At its heart, Pi-Mania is a cryptic text adventure, but with two key differences. Number one, there was an actual physical prize if you could determine the solution. Number two, it was bloody weird. Here's the introduction to Pi-Mania. On first turning the game on, you're asked for your name, and then you're tasked with your first riddle. A key turns the lock. The only way to progress any further at this point is to enter the Pi command on your keyboard. It's probably of no surprise that few people saw anything more than this screen, which would be a shame because they would have missed out on this. Yeah, that just carries on going for a bit. What follows this sequence is a game of seemingly random events. You move using numbers representing the faces of a clock, and you'll find items that can be given to Pi-Man. Pi-Man will turn up at random points and will tell you what sort of mood he's in. It's up to you to try and work out what item will placate him. In return for a correct item, you'll be given a gift. It's in these gifts, and in the locations that you visit, that the game's mysteries were hidden. To a simple-minded idiot person like myself, the game seems to offer no clue, no hint as to what is going on, but almost every sentence provided by the game is a cryptid. So complicated was this puzzle, in fact, that the prize wasn't claimed until 3 years after the launch of the game. Many had begun to assume that the game was an elaborate hoax, until eventually the golden sundial of Pi, worth a whopping £6,000, was claimed by Sue Cooper and Liz Newman on the 22nd of July 1985. It was found in the mouth of a horse, cut into the chalk hills of High and Over in the Sussex Downs. So how did they get to this solution? Croucher and Penfold released an article entitled Pi-Mania, The Answer. Here's what the document had to say. Thanks to all the publications and radio stations who said fine things about Automata, Pi-Mania and the PiMen. Thanks to you, the public, who became Pi-Maniacs, to the man who went to Bethlehem on Christmas Day, to the young man who went to Stonehenge on Midsummer's Day and interfered with a druid, to the loony who tried to book a ticket on the space shuttle, to the lady who cited us for causing her divorce, and to the thousands of Pi-Maniacs the world over who had a good time. Thank you for making it all worthwhile for us. Apologies for the appalling free disco single, but we didn't want to leave our cassettes' backsides with nothing on them. Just to pause for a second here, you may be wondering what this is referring to. Automata would fill the B-sides of their cassettes with their own bizarre music. Pi-Mania was no different. Here's a clip.
I've always wanted to be in showbiz. I've always wanted to be in showbiz.
Pi-Mania, Pi-Mania. Pi-Mania, Pi-Mania. Pi-Mania, Pi-Mania.
Give it a try, man.
Pi-Mania, Pi-Mania.
Meet the pie, man.
Pi-Mania, Pi-Mania.
Don't be so shy, man.
Pi-Mania, Pi-Mania.
Meet the pie, man.
Pi-Mania, Pi-Mania.
If you want to hear the rest of that track, or indeed any of Mel Crouch's other bizarre songs, they're all available on Spotify, so fill your boots. Anyway, the article continues. There were several clues in the lyrics, none more obvious than "Meet me at noon and I'll be there," which was a straightforward instruction. Whether you experience Pi-Mania on a ZX81, a Dragon, a ZX Spectrum or a BBC Micro, you were presented with a screen image of a pi symbol, or a star, rising high into the sky. This was your first visual clue. It was not pie in the sky, but pie in the sky, or star in the sky. And so, Pi-Maniacs, you should have turned your gazes towards the heavens. Soon after discovering how to begin your quest for the golden sundial of Pi, you were given your second major clue without having to do any work for it. Time is on your side. For those inflicted with decimal North Sea digital watches, it may have proved a little harder to see that the whole means of movement around the world of the Pi-Man related to the directions on the hands of a clock face. The Pi-Man was looking forward to you using normal English sentences to communicate with him and his world. He wanted you to ask any question, make any comment, and express yourselves as widely as possible. After much frustration, you discovered how to treat the Pi-Man's various moods, and he offered you various weirdly assorted gifts. If you were carrying one or more of the Pi-Man's gifts when you arrived at the neck of the woods, there was a chance that the Pi-Man would either take back one gift or allow the green door to open. The more useful the gift, the less likely it was that the door would have been revealed. Having passed through the green door, however, you had now entered a new phase of your quest. You were able to visit all 21 locations in Pi-Mania, and if you kept track of where you had been and where you were heading, you were able to map them thusly. Remembering your very first clue, on scanning the sky you should have been able to associate the locations of the Pi-Man's world with a heavenly constellation. The constellation of Pegasus, the winged horse. It really was pie in the sky. Pi-Mania is played at two levels. The first level is to get through the ultimate gate of Pi and to enjoy yourself as much as possible on the way. However, the second level is to understand the allegory of what is happening to you. thereby locating and winning the golden sundial of Pi. It was not until you helped the PiMen by understanding his moods and offering him the correct gifts that he allowed you to pass through the green door. Once past, it was not until you began using the PiMen's gifts that things started to make sense. The echo chamber was the place for you to utilize your megaphone, and you were given an important quotation. "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." Yes, you were looking straight from the horse's mouth. Whilst visiting the oily drum of the horse's earhole, the deaf aid could be used. The PiMen appeared, listening to the codes or notes for C-A-G-G. Many of you took this to be childish burble for C-A-G-G, but it was a little more subtle than that. The CA referred to the symbol for calcium, that chalky stuff. Yes, the GG was baby talk for a horse. Thus, you are now on the track of a giant chalk horse to place yourself within its mouth. Only the 7 gifts from the PiMan that were revealed to have attained their final resting place were genuine clues, and which all confirmed the location of the chalk horse. The objects were, in no particular order, the telescope, giving you the view from the location of the golden sundial of Pi. The compass, here is a sketch of the huge compass, which is to be found adjacent to the site of the chalk horse. The deaf aid, giving you the musical clue C-A-G-G. The calendar, revealing the correct date. The blackboard, indicating that the golden sundial of Pi was to be found on chalk. The hang glider, an appropriate clue to a famous location for loonies who enjoy throwing themselves off high hills strapped to overgrown kites. Psalm 33, which is adjacent to Psalm 34, the quotation on a metal plaque set in stone, adjacent to the site of the chalk horse overlooking the hills. To open the ultimate gate of Pi, you stood in the horse's mouth, the 21st location of the system. 7 objects were sacrificed beneath the gate, and you entered the final key, 22. Pi, 22/7, was a clue from beginning to end. The date of its discovery was a very straightforward matter. 22/7, July the 22nd. The golden sundial of Pi was located at noon on the 22nd of July in the mouth of the White Horse on Hindover Hill, which overlooks Beachy Head in the county of Sussex in England. The solution itself is almost as difficult to follow as the puzzle, but while the tale of Pi-Mania may have been over, it wasn't the end of PiMan's story. Automata continued releasing games and stuck to PiMan as a continued mascot. There were multiple software titles released over the following years, most of which either featured PiMan or just had Pi in the title. There was Pi-Eyed, a game which featured PiMan running down a street and attempting to enter bars on his journey. Within each bar, he has to drink every pint before he can leave, and the more drinks he downs, the more difficult and erratic his movement becomes. There was Pi-in-Ear, a hardware-themed Mr. Do game. Pi-R-Squared, an action game about navigating wheels. Primeval Man, a game in which I can't even make it past the first platform. Pyromania, a game that sees you putting out a building fire. Piebald, Pie in the Sky, the PiMen's Cocktail Cabinet, a literal cocktail recipe application with PiMen as the lead figure. Automata were nothing if not prolific and persistent. They were also consistently surrealist and continually pushed the envelope as far as their software and their business practices were concerned. The advertising campaign for PiMan and Automata was portrayed through hand-drawn comics, with artwork by Gremlin Evans. Advertising was done entirely in-house as neither Croucher nor Penfold appeared to trust the software industry at large. They would, for instance, charge wholesalers the same price as everyone else. These comics gave life to their characters and expanded beyond PiMan, introducing us to an extended family of characters ranging from Rasta PiMan, Sweaty Bits, and Uncle Groucho. While the PiMen comics were often humorous, fourth-wall breaking adverts for their upcoming games, the release of Deus Ex Machina saw with it a slew of comics that were altogether more serious. A bizarre slice of the future, written in prose, This set of adverts was unlike anything else out there. But then, so was Deus Ex Machina.
Hello. Deus Ex Machina.
Deus Ex Machina. Hello. I want you to pause your player when I count you down and recommence playing at the screen's request. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause.
Deus Ex Machina was Automata's final release, and if Pi-Mania seemed like a cryptic work of art, you hadn't seen anything yet. Described as a totally original audio-visual entertainment in which the player actively takes part in a televised fantasy, fully synchronized to a stereo soundtrack, the game followed the story of a defective machine and the life which grows within it. The game, if it can even really be called that, is an interactive art piece based on Shakespeare's Seven Ages of Man. It's just as bizarre as you'd imagine.
Tuesday evening, after tea and compulsory prayers, the last mouse on Earth tried to hide from mankind inside the machine. Just before it died, as the nerve gas eased its sphincter, the last ever mouse dropping caused a slight accident. You may control the progress of this accident on my behalf, and with my permission, and lead it up the telepath.
I forge your soul in molten spirals, which must not stop spinning. Reach out and touch them. I keep the watch.
Automata had taken their outsider ideas with PiMan to the next level, and effectively created a video game concept album. Instead of a strange B-side track on the other side of a cassette, Deus Ex Machina came with a full album that would be played alongside the actual game. The album cast featured Ian Dury, John Pertwee and Frankie Howard amongst others, and even on playing it today, the entire concept feels completely out of its time period. It was an early attempt to push software beyond the medium it was capable of. But Automata had perhaps pushed the envelope too far. While the game received great critical success, the game didn't sell nearly as well as it needed to. Croucher was quoted as saying, "I should have sold the game at a sensible price, but I wanted to put a lovely poster in it, a nice packaging, and a double vinyl gatefold." Only 5,000 copies had been distributed by the time Automata called it a day. Christian Penfold, in an interview with Sinclair User, said, "For Mel, it was the crescendo of an idea, an emotional achievement. On my side, I have been flattened by the lack of response and sales despite the wonderful things said about it. I sit here and feel heartbroken at the pathetic way the retailers have handled it." It is a heart-wrenching quote to reread, especially considering the critical response the game had received. Automata may have been the first games company in the UK, but they were almost immediately running on the outside lane, not just in terms of distribution, but in just how forward-thinking their endeavours were. Not content with merely producing games, their entire catalogue seems to break the fourth wall. From Pi-Mania to Deus Ex Machina to everything in between, there was always a consistent physical presence to the presentation of their games, be it a golden sundial, a B-side recording, or an entire concept album. Games as an art form is something that's often debated today, and it's strange that Automata are very rarely referred back to. They were pioneers of the industry, with art through electronic media, and they did all of this while gaming was still finding its footing in the home market. While the works of Automata are often obtuse and frustrating, they pushed the boundaries of gaming before the boundaries had even been fully formed. While Automata UK may have eventually failed in its commercial success, Croucher and Penfold's insistence on sticking to their vision should be commended. Penfold may have been heartbroken by their failures, but Automata's conviction to their vision is more than a success. It's something that should be talked about for generations. Mel Croucher continues to work in the industry and released a sequel to Deus Ex Machina in 2015. He continues to write, draw, and do the things you would expect someone like Mel Croucher to do. His legacy as the grandfather of the British video games industry is much deserved. After Automata's dissolution, Christian Penfold apparently dropped off the face of the earth, and information on him since 1985 is scant. I just hope that the heartache of Deus Ex Machina's commercial failure doesn't hold heavy with him, because the impression it left behind can't be overstated. There is so much to the story of Automata, and it's one that you could pick away at for weeks. I hope at least you've enjoyed this condensed look down one of the stranger avenues of gaming in the UK. In the description you'll be able to find links to the sources I've used and potentially fall down your own rabbit hole, but personally I've found this whole thing fascinating to read about, and I hope I've done it and the people involved justice.